Hey everyone, I'm James Lynch, and this is Early Look, the show where I take a look at an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, I'm going to be previewing the UFC 287 main event, middleweight champion Alex Pereira defending his title against Israel Adesanya. But before I give you my preview and pick, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. Those three things really do help out this channel a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. It's just a quick, easy thing you can do, which would be awesome. Okay, really excited to get into this one. This event's taking place in Miami, hence the kind of Miami lighting behind me here, and really excited for this one. Pereira Adesanya 2, a lot going into this one. If you haven't watched the show before, basically I go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles, and then at the end I give you my picks. Some of it may be relevant, it may not be. I just like looking at different angles when it comes to breaking down and previewing fights, and this is a really anticipated rematch in the MMA cage. I realize they fought two other times in kickboxing, but really exciting matchup. So I mentioned it there, UFC 287, Pereira Adesanya, April 8th, Miami, Florida. This is going to be a 5-round middleweight title, and it's going to be taking place, I'm assuming, in a bigger cage. It's at the Miami Dade Arena. Never been there, actually never been to Florida, period, but imagine that's going to be a bigger cage, so very interesting to see how this all unfolds. Let's get to the champion first, Alex Pereira, and if you watch my breakdown of this fight for UFC, I think it was, 281, the first fight they had in MMA, a lot of this I'm going to kind of repeat, but I won't go in as much detail just to save you guys the hassle if you watched that breakdown already. Okay, so Alex Pereira, you can see there, 7-1. He's got 6 knockouts, 0 submissions, and 1 decision. He is 35 years old. He'll be 36 in July, but that won't matter because the fight's going to be before that. He's 6'4" with an 80-inch reach, so he has the exact same height and reach as Israel Adesanya. In terms of the age, though, a little bit older there. Adesanya, you can see, just 33 years old, so a little bit younger than 2 years younger than Alex Pereira. What do we got here? So I mentioned there, he is the UFC middleweight champion. He's also the former Glory middleweight and light heavyweight champion. He's part of Team Teixeira, as we know, and he's got a black belt in kickboxing, which is what they said on his Wikipedia page. I had some people dispute that, like, what does a black belt in kickboxing mean? It's just what they have on this Wikipedia page. So Pereira, in his short UFC career, has already got performance of the night bonus 3 times against Andre McAlina, Sean Strickland, and Israel Adesanya. You can see Pereira did not have an amateur debut. Of course, he came over from the kickboxing world, went straight to the pros way back in October of 2015, a fight that he ended up losing. Let's find that fight here. That was against, I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name, but he lost to him. That was his first fight. It's actually interesting if you go look at the amount of fighters, successful fighters that lost their pro debut. The list is actually pretty long. Did not make his UFC debut until November of 2021, so not that long ago. Israel Adesanya at that point already had 11 UFC fights, just for some context there. You can see there that Pereira is 4-0 in the UFC. He's got 3 stoppage victories, just the 1 decision over Bruno Silva. Some notable wins that he has, obviously the last 2, Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, knocking out both of those opponents. So what's interesting about both those losses is that it's the first time that both Adesanya and Strickland have been finished in the UFC. With Strickland, I know he was finished at welterweight. First time Strickland's been finished at middleweight, and Adesanya, first stoppage loss period in the UFC. He obviously lost a decision to Jan Blachowicz back when he moved up to light heavyweight. That's Adesanya, that is. And you can see there, Pereira, no losses. Now, Pereira's kickboxing record, if you go and look at it here, he was 33-7. He had 21 knockouts. He defeated Adesanya twice in that. Going to quickly just mention those 2 fights because, again, people are like, Pereira's got, 3 wins over Adesanya already. He's got 1 in MMA and 2 in kickboxing. So the first fight that they had at Glory of Heroes 1 back in April of 2016 in China, that was a fight that Adesanya lost by decision, but some people felt like Adesanya should have got the nod in that one, a bit of a controversial one. I recommend you go watch that for yourself before you make any judgments. And then if you look at the rematch in kickboxing, which was Glory of Heroes 7 back in March of 2017, that was in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Adesanya ended up losing by knockout in the 3rd round. It was the first time that Adesanya had been knocked out in 80 kickboxing fights, and it was a fight that Adesanya was looking pretty good in before the knockout, just being a little bit over aggressive in that one, and Pereira took advantage of that as well. So just a little history there. Obviously Pereira has 2 kickboxing wins and 1 MMA win, but like I said, the first kickboxing fight probably should have gone the other way, or could have gone the other way, I should say. I'm not going to make any assumptions there. You can see Pereira in his UFC career, because he's only got 4 fights, hasn't really had any major layoffs. This might be one of the longer layoffs he's had, going from Adesanya to the Adesanya rematch in MMA. He's also never had any major injuries as well, at least not in MMA. So again, we don't have a big sample size with Pereira in MMA, but he's looked pretty much flawless in those performances. So that's everything you need to know about middleweight champion Alex Pereira, or Pereira, however you want to say it. Doesn't matter. Let's get to Israel Adesanya, the former middleweight champion. You can see there, 23-2 record, 15 knockouts, 0 submissions, 8 decisions in his career. He's 33 years old. He's 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. So again, same height and reach as Pereira, but he's 2 years younger. We often think of Pereira being the much bigger guy. Obviously, I think it's pretty obvious that Pereira cuts more weight than Adesanya does, but height and reach wise, they are identical, as Mike Goldberg used to say. Adesanya is a BJJ purple belt. He's a former middleweight champion. He's also the former Glory middleweight he's the former Glory middleweight champion title challenger. That makes sense. He was never champion, and he comes to us from City Kickboxing. Some other accolades for Adesanya. He had 5 successful title defenses at middleweight, which is pretty impressive. He's got performance of the night 5 times against Rob Wilkinson, Brad Tavares, Derek Brunson, Robert Whitaker, and Paulo Costa. He's got fight of the night 2 times against Anderson Silva and Calvin Gastelum. He's got the most knockdowns in a UFC title fight with 4. He's got the second longest winning streak in UFC middleweight division history at 12. He also has the second most title fight wins in middleweight division history at 7. And he's also got the longest average fight time in UFC middleweight division history at 17 minutes and 55 seconds. That's according to Wikipedia there. You can see there, Adesanya had his amateur debut way back in, if we go all the way back here, way back in November of 2009, a fight that he ended up losing. Made his professional debut in March of 2012, and then made his UFC debut in February of 2018, which is the fight against Rob Wilkinson right there. You can see it. That was in February 2018. And again, he had 11 more fights by the time that Pereira made his UFC debut. Israel Adesanya's got a 12-2 UFC record. He's got 4 stoppage wins. Some notable wins on the resume include Marvin Vettori 2 times, Derek Brunson, Anderson Silva, Calvin Gastelum, Robert Whitaker 2 times, Yoel Romero, and Jared Cannonier. His only losses are against Jan Blachowicz, which was at light heavyweight, and then Alex Pereira in the last fight. Adesanya's kickboxing record, got to mention that quickly. He was 75-5. He had 27 knockouts. Of his 5 losses, he only had 1 knockout loss, and that was the knockout to Pereira. So the reason I bring that up is because, people talk about, Adesanya's been finished a few times. He hasn't been finished that much in terms of his overall career, kickboxing and MMA. Got to point that out. Adesanya's never really had any major layoffs, nor has he had any issues with injuries or USADA. He's had a couple close fights. We'll go over those real quick. If you go to MMA decisions, you can see the media scorecards for that. We'll start first with the first Vettori fight, which was a split decision. That was back in April of 2018. UFC on Fox 29. 15 media members scored the fight for Israel Adesanya, only 2 scoring it for Vettori. So again, people look back at that fight, they say split decision. Majority of people felt Adesanya won that. The Yoel Romero fight, that was back in UFC 248, March 2020. 12 media members scored the fight for Adesanya, 2 scored it a draw, and 7 scored it for Romero. That was the fight where nothing really happened, right? So kind of a weird one, almost a little bit of Nagano and Lewis and Rose and Carla, kind of like that. But Israel did end up getting the win there. The Jan Blachowicz fight, I thought it was a clear win for Jan Blachowicz, but going back and look at the scorecards there, you can see at UFC 259 in March of 2021, 19 media members scored the fight for Jan Blachowicz, 7 media members scored it for Adesanya. I don't know how they scored it that way. I thought Jan clearly won that. Adesanya was on his back most of the fight. So again, that was a loss there. And then the Adesanya Whitaker rematch, which I remember after that fight, people were giving me crap for saying that Adesanya won. Looking at the scorecards for that, UFC 271 back in February of 2022, so last February, 20 media members scoring the fight for Adesanya, only 5 scoring it for Whitaker. That was at UFC 271. So again, he's had a couple close fights in his career. Okay, let's go back to their fight at UFC 281. You can see the result there, obviously. Pereira, actually wanted to get the actual fight there. So Pereira getting the standing knockout at 2 minutes and 1 second of round 5, got all the accolades, comeback fight, all that stuff. But I went back and looked at the rounds here, and and I'm just going to show you the stats here as well. These stats don't mean everything. I just bring them up because it just adds a little bit more visually to this breakdown. So I went back and watched the fight, November 12th, 2022 in New York, so bigger cage there, MSG. Round 1, we'll start with that. If you look at the stats here, you can see that Pereira actually had 56% significant strikes. Adesanya only having, let's look at the overall stats here first, and then we'll go round by round. So significant strikes, Pereira did land more, 57% compared to 53. Total strikes, Pereira also landed more, 140 to 214, as opposed to 119 of 209. And then if you look at, that was total significant strikes, 53% for Adesanya, 57 for Pereira. And then you look at it here, yeah, a bunch of different stats there, but let's go round by round. So first round a bit closer, but some of the things that were notable in that first round, Israel Adesanya landing a straight right. He actually tagged Pereira in there and landed a 2-punch combo. I think most people, again, a close round, but I think most people felt like Adesanya won that first round. The second round, you can see, is a little bit more clear here for Adesanya. Pereira lands a left, Pereira actually landed a left hand in that one and tagged Adesanya. Adesanya tried for a takedown. That ends up not working out. Pereira landed a few good jabs in that round. So that round, I think, goes to Pereira, despite the fact that Adesanya did outstrike him percentage-wise. You can see 45, well, sorry, Pereira had more strikes there, 47%, but you can see the actual strikes landed was more by Adesanya here, because Adesanya's in red, so he landed 20 compared to 17. But Pereira clearly won that round. Again, failed takedown from Adesanya. He tagged Adesanya in that round as well, too. Okay, round 3. Let's look at that. 57% compared to 56. Big right by Adesanya. I remember in that round, Pereira did land a body shot and kick. Adesanya was able to get a takedown in that round, landed a couple good shots on top, even threw an axe kick in that round as well. I think that round goes to Adesanya. So if you're keeping score here, Adesanya up 2-1 going into the championship rounds. Fourth round. You can see there, 57% for Adesanya, just 51% for Alex Pereira. Adesanya landing a jab and a right and a body kick. Pereira looking a little bit slower in this round. Adesanya with a failed takedown, and then Pereira missed himself with a big shot. Again, if you look at the stats here and kind of overall, I think that again was an Israel Adesanya round. Okay, fifth round, clear for Alex Pereira, 75% compared to 60, also because there was a finish in that round. Pereira coming out really strong in this round, Adesanya ends up pinning him against the cage. Pereira gets blocks a kick, and then a left hook is what basically sealed the fate for Israel Adesanya. Left hook, and then standing TKO finish there for Alex Pereira to get the finish, like I mentioned, at 2 minutes and 10 seconds of the fifth round. So what's kind of interesting here, again, first round might have gone Pereira's way, maybe. So maybe it's 2-2 going into the fifth. But I think, again, if you go back and watch it, you probably give that first round to Adesanya. So realistically, Adesanya was up 3 rounds to 1 in that fifth round, going into that fifth round. So in all likelihood, if Pereira didn't get the finish, it might have gone Adesanya's way. Even if Pereira would have won that round, I think you could have made the argument for Adesanya winning that fight if it did hit the scorecard. So I just want to point that out because, again, it's kind of an interesting fight in the sense that, it was close, but I think Adesanya was ahead, and again, Pereira was able to tag him and get it done. Let's go look at the odds for this fight. Should point out the odds for their first fight. Did have Adesanya as a big favorite here at -225. This time around, went and looked at the odds. You can see here, Adesanya is still a favorite, a slight favorite, but Pereira, the underdog going into this one, which is very interesting in terms of Pereira, basically having 3 wins over Adesanya as it is. Okay, going to get to my pick here. So for the rematch, how I think this one's going to go down. So here's the thing. You can look at this a couple different ways. First thing you can look at is the fact that Adesanya has lost 3 times to him mentally. That could take a toll on him in terms of him knowing this is it. Because what happens if Adesanya loses? He's in this really weird spot, basically that Robert Whittaker was in for a while, which is you've lost twice already to the champ. So there's a lot of a risk. There's a big risk here for Adesanya if he loses. In terms of pressure, I think there's way more pressure on Adesanya trying to get his belt back as opposed to Pereira winning the rematch here. The other thing is, because what happens with Adesanya? If he loses, is he going to hang around? Is he going to be like Max Holloway and fight, contenders and hope that he gets another shot? Probably not. Especially if he gets finished again, I think there's it's going to be very tough to get a third fight with Pereira if he ends up losing this one. Now with Pereira, if he loses this, there's always the possibility of getting a fight with Adesanya again because he has the win. There's also the possibility of him moving up to 205, his buddy Glover Teixeira retiring. There's been some talk about Jamal Hill and Alex Pereira. There's been some talk about Alex Pereira and Yuri Prohaska as well. So I think as far as pressure goes, Pereira doesn't have nearly as much going into this fight because he has that option of going to 205. Adesanya's already gone to 205 and it didn't go so well for him. Maybe he could look at that down the line. But again, I think from the pressure standpoint, that definitely falls on Adesanya here. Then there's the other side of this thing, which is my view, which is that I think Adesanya was winning that fight going into the fifth round. So you got to take some, pride in that. I think that's why he's the favorite here. Not to mention what Adesanya has done throughout his career. I mean, he's winning fights at middleweight. He's got 1 loss at middleweight. And again, the only close fight he's had at middleweight prior to, you can't call this close because he lost, he got finished. But the only other fight that was close was the Yoel Romero fight, which is a fight he didn't really engage much in. So yeah, outside of that, he's never really been in any major danger. Actually, I should say Whittaker was close too. So Whittaker and Romero, the only 2 close fights he has, but overall he's looked pretty good and he's beat a lot of good opponents decisively, like Vettori, Whittaker. He knocked out Whittaker. He's still the only fighter to knock out Robert Whittaker at 185. That's got to count for something too. So yeah, there's a lot of positives here. I think what it comes down to is, do you think Pereira can get the knockout again? I think these guys know each other so well. I think Eugene Behrman is one of the best coaches in the game right now. I think Adesanya has just got to win here. I don't think it has to be pretty. We've seen him fight guys with knockout power like Cannonier, like Whitaker, and maybe not have the most exciting performance, but end up getting it done. I think you're going to see a more cautious Adesanya. I think he's going to pick his shots. And I think he's going to end up winning a decision here. That was the pick I had in the last fight. It almost came to fruition had he not got knocked out in the 5th. And I just think it's very hard to knock out Adesanya just based on his history. If we're talking about an Adesanya who's been knocked out several times, for example, if this was Michael Bisping a few years ago and he was fighting Pereira and he got knocked out the first time, I'd feel a little bit better about a Pereira knockout the second time around. But I think with the fact that Adesanya is shown to have a bit of a chin, we've seen him get tagged a few times by other guys, like Gaslam tagged him, for example. He was able to survive that. I just see him potentially winning a decision here. So I like Adesanya here by decision. To get it done over Pereira. Could Pereira knock him out again? Absolutely. I mentioned that pressure factor as well with Adesanya. He really has to win this. I almost am a bit surprised that they're running the rematch back so soon because, again, if this doesn't work out, Adesanya's in a really weird spot here. Whereas Pereira, like I said, not as much pressure because there is that option to go up to 205 pounds. So I'm going to go Adesanya decision. Might not be the most popular choice. Again, the betting odds do have Adesanya as the favorite, but I think that's how he wins this fight. I think he just, plays a little bit safer and picks his shots and ends up sort of, getting his shots in and winning a decision there. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking? Do you think Pereira will get it done again? Do you like Adesanya? Let me know in the comments. More than happy to discuss this fight with you as long as there's no insults. We can have a good discussion here in the comments about this fight. Would really appreciate it if you let me know. And also, if there's any other fights you want me to preview, let me know. I know I've been slacking on the early looks. I've just been really busy, but got a lot of really good fights coming up. But let's say there's a fight that's not a main event or a title fight and you want me to preview it, more than happy to do that too. Always open a suggestion with you guys. So just let me know. I try and do the show once a week, the show where we, again, take an early look at some of these big fights that are coming up. One more time, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I'm posting content on here every single day. Make sure you hit that like button. The like button really does help with the algorithm. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss any videos that are uploaded on this channel. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all the same handle, at Lynch on Sports. Again, I'm posting content on there as much as I can. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in. I will talk to you guys soon with another edition of Early Look for next week, most likely. And really appreciate you tuning in. I'll talk to you guys soon.